Hi, you're listening to This Is Not Your Practice Life. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friends. I'm a certified life and emotional intelligence coach. And if you really want to step into your highest self, there are a few non-negotiables you're going to have to learn, and I am just the person to help you do it. No matter your past, I'm here to help you create a more fulfilling future. So stick around with me. Not only will I teach you how to navigate your brain's daily mind drama, but I'll help you actually understand your mind, your emotions, why you do the things you do, and why others do the things they do. Most importantly, I'll help you build the self-awareness skills to create whatever results you want. It's never too late to change the trajectory of your life. After all, this is not your practice life. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. I'm so excited to have you today and to get to talk to you because, as you can probably tell, I have not released a podcast episode in about 2 weeks, and I didn't want that to happen again. Things have been just crazy busy. I have had more social interactions in the last probably 6 weeks than I have had maybe the entire time that I lived in Las Vegas. My husband and I, we recently moved back to our hometown of Louisville, Kentucky. And prior to that, we lived in Las Vegas for almost 4 years. And I will tell you that in Las Vegas, because we didn't really know many people, myself included, other than my clients, I just didn't have social interactions. The only time I had social interactions in almost 4 years was if I was invited to something that my husband was doing with people he had met, or if I was doing something with a few of my local clients. But that was so far and few in between that I spent a lot of time alone. So now that we are back in our hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, obviously this is where our family base is. This is where all of our friends are from. This is, where we went to high school and college. And so we've been catching up with people that we haven't seen in many, many years. And that's part of why I hadn't released a new episode. I just feel like I've been go, 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 go. And then when I do have downtime, I am resting and recharging because I'm someone that, as much as I love people and interacting and really get a lot from it, it also wears me out. And so anyways, I just wanted to make sure that you all got a podcast episode this week, and hopefully it's one that you really, really enjoy. The title of it, as you can probably see, is When to Wait and When to Go. And the reason that I'm going to talk about this is because I think sometimes we confuse or get into our head about when our brain tells us we're not ready for something. So have you ever had a moment where your brain is like, I just don't feel ready. I just don't think it's time. I need things to slow down. Sometimes those things are very, very valid. And we really do need seasons of maybe rest or reprieve or restoration. And then other times, our brain is absolutely trying to protect us and keep us from having to feel anything we don't want to feel or do anything we don't want to do, or experience hard things. And the thing about it is, if we can recognize the difference, that is really key. Otherwise, we stay stuck in a pattern if we don't recognize it. And if we do recognize it, we get to push against that edge that would really help us grow. So that is what I hope you walk away with from today's episode, of really understanding when to wait and when to go, and feel like you actually understand the truth around readiness and fear and finally moving forward. So that's what we're getting into. So first things first, I really wanted to dig into examples of when we may really need a pause, especially when our brain is giving us all of that chatter of I just don't know that I'm ready. I just don't know if it's the right timing. And there can be multiple examples of when this shows up for you. It could be right before you do something that feels scary, right? Like maybe go back to school, or maybe, transition to a new job or even applying for new jobs. Maybe it's taking a leap of faith if you want to be an entrepreneur and you're getting ready to leap in that way. Maybe it's the first time you've ever, wanted to say yes to yourself, to heal or to grow or to push yourself or stretch yourself. So there's a lot of ways that this will show up whenever maybe your brain says, I just don't know if it's the right time. I don't know if I should do this. I don't know if I should wait. I'm kind of confused. And so I just want to first start out with a few examples of when maybe a pause or taking some time is really necessary, because I do think there are times for both. Now, obviously, as a coach, I experience way more of dealing with people's general resistance because they're about to reach their next level, or they have said that they wanted to reach their next level, and then their brain goes haywire into protecting them, and it does it in ways that are, very subconscious. So that's what I'm used to seeing. But every now and then I will, even as a coach, get on a consult where I can immediately tell within the first 15 or 20 minutes that someone is not ready for coaching specifically. So like I said, this doesn't just apply to if you want to be coached, if you don't want to be coached, if you want to go to therapy, if you don't want to go to therapy, right? Those are just examples that I am giving because I'm a coach. So this is where I see it most. But there will be a lot of moments in your life where your brain says, I just don't know, or I don't know if I feel ready, or I feel very fragile, and I don't know what's next for me, or when I should do it, or if I'm on the right path. And if your brain is telling you that, no matter what the context is, I just want you to have some clarity by having this episode. So I'm going to give you some examples of when you really may need to pause if your brain is offering like that you need, to wait on something. So one of the things that can be very valid about needing to wait is if you're in any kind of major life transition. So that could be maybe you've moved, right? So like I said, my husband and I, we recently moved from Las Vegas to Kentucky. That's pretty much a cross-country move. And there were many things that I wanted to do in business. A lot of I think I had even told you guys on the podcast, I wanted to start a guest speaker list. And I wanted to, I had all these ideas, and I just did not account for how fatigued I would be in one, following through on the commitments I had already committed to, and two, trying to start a bunch of new things that I really did want to do. So if you're in a major life transition, like moving, maybe a relationship has ended, maybe you've recently had a baby, or you're starting a new job, or you are grieving because you've lost someone you love, all of that is very valid to really listen to maybe the rest your brain is saying that you need, and just assessing that on a deeper level, because it's essentially like the ground underneath you is shifting. Or if you think of mud, right? You wouldn't build a house necessarily on sinking sand or whatever it is, like quicksand, or anything that's super muddy and puddly. You want a strong foundation. So if you feel like the ground underneath you is shifting a lot, you want to get that under control before you do anything else. And sometimes that is what I've experienced as a coach doing consults with certain women. Some women come in and their life feels in absolute turmoil, but there is a readiness that I can hear in their voice that even though this may be the hardest thing they've ever done, maybe they've never invested in themselves, maybe they've never spent money, getting ready to do the things that they're about to do, there's still it's subtle, right? But there's still a confidence of, I trust myself and I'm ready. Whereas other times, like I said, another woman can come on and have many of the same circumstances as, maybe someone who is ready, but there's just a difference in the energy and how she is speaking that oftentimes lets me know, I think the ground is just a little bit too shaky, and that needs to be stronger before she will be ready. So again, that's just a coaching example, but this could be, applied to so many different things in your life, especially when your brain is saying, am I ready, or do I need to wait, or do I need to press the gas? Do I need to go and just face it, or do I need to, wait? And so I want to continue talking about this. So another example is if you feel like your nervous system is absolutely fried. Remember that our nervous system is a part of what even allows us to learn skills. And, again, specifically speaking in terms of why you may be listening to this podcast, it's for developing skills and developing mindset and learning emotional intelligence and learning how to take back the reins on your life. If there's any reason those reins have gotten away from you. But if your nervous system is absolutely fried or overloaded, that can be a reason why you need to wait. So examples, maybe you've been surviving for way too long, like you're burnt out, maybe you're caregiving a lot, you're over functioning, like so much so that you feel and maybe would describe yourself as broken. It's not that you're actually broken, but your bandwidth and your capacity is like maxed out. And you may think like, I need a whole new version of myself. I can't keep operating this way. But what you actually need is just rest and learning how to be first. And again, getting that foundation really strong and then building on top of that. So whenever I have a consult with someone and it sounds like their nervous system is shot and, they are really, really in a place where it just sounds like maybe they're crying a lot, they feel very confused, they can't think straight, they're over exhausted, they're taking care of everybody else, they haven't even learned how to take care of themselves or how to say no or how to set a boundary of, I know that a million people need me, but I need me first. Like until they've done that, usually their nervous system is quite fried. And that is absolutely a reason to say, as much as I want to maybe, do something for myself that feels like it's going to be progressive, I might have to wait because I need to get myself a little bit more regulated, right? Not perfect. That's the thing. Maybe not perfect, but much more regulated so that I feel like the ground underneath me is a little bit more sturdy. Like you don't want to start something when you're already so frazzled that it adds to the overwhelm, The next thing, another example I should say, is that maybe if you genuinely don't know what it is that you want, that could be a reason to wait, or that could be a reason to pause. And I don't mean like in a pretend, I'm quoting, but a pretend confused way, but like in an absolutely real, quiet, like necessary unraveling that sometimes has to happen for us. Okay. So for many women, they are unlearning who they were told they had to be. And a lot of times in that unraveling or that unlearning, they don't always know exactly what they want. And I have found that sometimes that's the hardest place to be whenever I'm coaching specifically. Again, I'm giving coach specific examples just because I'm a coach. And so it tends to be people either sign up for a consult because they're so ready and they know they want different. They may not know exactly what they want, but they are in a place on stable ground enough to like figure that out, and they have enough capacity to dig into the hard and to do the work together. But then there are also, women and maybe even men. I don't work with a lot of men, but so if you're a man that is listening to this or a male that is listening to the podcast, just know like you can apply all of these things, but I tend to speak specifically for women just because that's who I work with. However, if you don't know what it is that you want, you really have to ask yourself, is that based on everything that maybe you have learned from other people, the things that have been placed on you from other people? It can sometimes be a very helpful pause to take and to wait when you are trying to figure out even like who you are or what you've been doing that has gotten you to the point that you're at. before going on and taking on the work that's maybe going to change everything in your life. So again, that is a very personal thing that you have to kind of settle in with. And I will just say, like, on the coaching perspective, if there is ever a time where you're wanting something different for your life, but you're really confused on it, do I need this now? I don't know. I can't figure out if my nervous system is unsettled. I can't figure out if now's the right time. I can't figure out if this is what I need. I don't know if I need to wait or go. Schedule a consult, okay? Scheduling a consult with me is free for an hour. We will talk, and I am very, very honest, because let me tell you something, that as a coach, I do not want anybody spending their hard-earned dollars or investing with me if they are not ready. I will be very honest with you on that consult if I think you are ready, or if I think that you need to wait or seek someone else or even go to therapy. Okay, that is something that I'm always going to be very honest about, because I will tell you, it is not fun for me as the coach to have someone who is not ready to dig into this level of work. I know that it's hard and challenging because I've been doing it for so long. I also witness how challenging it is for my clients, right? But it's something that many times by the time they've gotten on a consult, they're ready for. However, if you are in confusion about, do I, don't I, am I ready, am I not ready? Like, even if it's not about coaching, even if it's like, am I ready to, start school, go to college? Am I ready to move on from this relationship? Am I ready to go do these things? Do I need to wait? Do I need to go? Like, do I just need to get over myself and just do it? You know what I mean? No matter what it is, schedule a consult, because in talking all of that out, I am someone that's basically like third party, right? I don't have attachments. I don't have biases. I'm able to show up neutral, and I'm able to hear what you're saying, how you're saying it, and the energy you're saying it in. And many times there's a lot of signals in that. So if there's ever a time you're confused, schedule a consult, and I will be very honest about if you seem ready for something, or if I would suggest, and not that you have to take my advice, right? Or if I would suggest that maybe you wait or seek some other options that are going to help you really get that ground that we're talking about sturdy, okay? That's what we want. So now here comes some of the, we'll call it tough love, okay? The tough love, but the things that we need to hear sometimes that we don't always want to hear. So before you come for me, just know that yes, there are sometimes very valid reasons, as we just talked about, where waiting is absolutely appropriate. And now we're going to talk about maybe what your brain wants to tell you is appropriate for waiting and how to know the difference. Because here's the thing, waiting and quote unquote not being ready, oftentimes, most often, outside of all of the other examples that I just gave, I would say like 80% of the time, not being ready or waiting is a shield of protection, okay? There is many forms of waiting, and this is the kind that feels very valid in your mind. But one of the telltale signs that it has become a shield to protect you is when you keep circling the same desire for months or years, or the same patterns that you're sick and tired of for months and years, or when you've been ready to move on from something or change something for months or years, and you keep saying, I'm just waiting, or I don't feel ready. Okay, when that is happening, we have to have some tough love. So maybe you fall into the first category of examples, and that's okay. Take permission to wait. If you're not sure and you're shaky, schedule a consult. We'll talk it out. I'll let you know, even if that doesn't lead to any kind of work together, because maybe it's not even so much about coaching, it's about other big things. But this is going to be for the people that are likely, maybe unintentionally, using waiting as an excuse because that feels safer, okay? And we have to call it out, because you have to be aware of your patterns before you can ever change patterns that are not working, okay? So it's time for the honest part. So that is what happens when we are using I'm not ready or I need to wait. Sometimes, while it feels very, very valid, if you keep circling the same desires or patterns or habits or things that you're sick of that you've been doing for a very long time, you have to be honest that it's not so much a pause, but more so a pattern, and we've got to work on that, okay? So let's talk about what things you maybe think you're waiting for versus what you're actually avoiding. So here are some things that I hear clients say, and we're going to talk about them. Sometimes clients will say to me, I'm waiting until I'm less overwhelmed. Okay. Now here's the thing. You've convinced yourself that you need perfect conditions to grow. Being overwhelmed doesn't feel good to you. You don't know how to regulate your nervous system in that overwhelm. That's an emotional intelligence skill. And here's the thing, growth is what would change your conditions. So that's what you have to be aware of. When you're saying, I'm waiting until I feel less overwhelmed, and you're spiraling negatively in the overwhelm, but you're never growing the skills or getting the tools to change why you often feel that way, that is an avoidance pattern, okay? So overwhelm is not always just a scheduling problem, like you have a bunch of things on your plate or your calendar or things you're juggling. Sometimes overwhelm is simply there because of what you are avoiding, because it is a pattern you need to look at, okay? Let me give you another example of what clients will say, and I do have several of these, but another one is, I'm waiting until I feel more confident, or I'm waiting until I am more confident. And here's the thing, you're expecting that confidence will help you take action, okay? But confidence grows when you take action still feeling scared, okay? So that's huge. I did a podcast episode about this years ago. It's probably way in the beginning of the podcast, but people often want to feel confident first. And the episode that I did years ago is that what's required in order to build confidence is courage. So don't wait until you feel more confident. You will grow confidence by doing whatever it is that you need to do scared, afraid, uncomfortable, uneasy, without the skills that you think you need. That is what will grow your confidence. You don't wait to feel confident to write a cookbook or to do a podcast or to start a business or to, whatever it may be, right? Whatever it may be. Go to school, quit a job, tell someone you love them, that maybe you're dating. Like, don't wait until you feel confident to do it. Do it scared. That will build your confidence. Confidence is not a prerequisite. It's a byproduct of the actions that you're taking, okay? The next thing that clients will sometimes say to me is, I'm just waiting for more clarity. I don't feel clear. And the thing about this is whenever your brain is saying, I'm just waiting for more clarity because I don't feel totally clear, you're often afraid of choosing wrong. And I have so many clients that are afraid of making the wrong decision. So they avoid making decisions at all. They avoid any kind of choosing at all. And if there's something that I could say to you, it's that clarity doesn't come from thinking and spiraling and ruminating in your thoughts. It comes from committing. Okay, clarity comes from committing, and it kind of goes along with the whole thing about confidence and action. When you're committed to something, you have to figure things out. So once you've committed to something, you have to find clarity in order to go through with the commitments, whatever the commitment may be. So for instance, another example, when I decided that I was going to commit to starting a podcast and I had no idea how to record, what programs to use, how to edit it, how to upload it, how to get it on multiple sites. Like I had no clue about any of those things. I could have definitely said, I'm waiting until I'm more confident, or even I'm waiting for more clarity on how to do things and I need to watch more YouTubes and I need to figure more things out. And as soon as I know everything and feel better and confident and clear, then I'll do it. But the thing about it is I just felt shaky and uneasy and did it. right? I didn't wait to feel confident, and I also didn't wait to feel clear. When I made the commitment to do it, then the clarity came because I had to work my brain to figure it out. So be very careful if you're waiting for clarity or waiting for confidence. Here's another example of what clients will say. I'm waiting for the timing to feel right. Oh my goodness, if I had $1 for every single time I hear a client say, I'm waiting for the timing to feel right. And again, we're not talking about any of the examples in the beginning of this episode. So if this just struck a chord with you and you're feeling a type of way, remember that any of the things that we talked about in the beginning, yes, sometimes a pause is necessary. I'm talking about the moments where our brain uses certain lines and sentences to keep us from feeling things we don't want to feel. And a big one for many people is I'm waiting for the time to feel right. And because when we're saying this, it's because we expect ease, okay, to be the green light to do something or maybe not do something. So growth often will feel like fear because that's how we know that we're stretching. But we get this level of, I say this to my clients a lot, but sometimes we expect in this very entitling way, we feel this entitlement for ease to be a part of all the things that we're doing. So a lot of times whenever someone says, I would just want the timing to be right, what they're actually saying is I want there to be a lot of ease. Now, is it a problem that we want there to be ease? No, we're allowed to ask for everything that we want in our life and to ask for ease, but that doesn't mean we are entitled to ease. Okay, there's a difference between asking and being in receiving of I would like to do this thing and I hope that the timing is right and I would love to feel ease and putting that out in the world and hoping to get that back. But sometimes things are not going to feel like ease. So you have to watch when your brain is using timing against you, okay? Another example of things that clients will say, I'm waiting until I have more money. This is another one. If I had $1 for every single time someone said, I'm waiting until I have more money. If I had continued saying this, I would still be in the same place that I was in 2016 when I was too broke, specifically for me, to hire my coach. Okay, I probably wouldn't even be talking to you on this podcast. I probably would not even be coaching the women that I've coached. I would have never met all the women that I know through my business if I had allowed that sentence to do what it does to many people, and that is absolutely remove possibility from your life. Okay, I know that this one feels true. Money is very sensitive. What we do is we look at the exact amount that's living in our bank account, and oftentimes that amount, we feel like money is telling me no. Money is telling me no. I only have X amount in my bank account. Money is telling me no. And so I'm waiting until I have more. And that statement, waiting, is very dangerous, okay? Because money is the most socially acceptable scapegoat for avoiding any kind of risk. And being able to take risk, by the way, and feel regulated in your nervous system is a part of emotional intelligence. And if you're not actively working on your skills around emotional intelligence, you will likely spend a lot of your life avoiding risk because it doesn't feel cozy and it doesn't feel comfortable. But you're not protecting your bank account, you're protecting your identity, okay? So much of what we need is on the other side of risk, whether that's financial or something else. And like I said, the most troublesome part of that sentence, I'm waiting until I have more money, is that the waiting typically takes someone a very long time because they have not put themselves in a position of risk where they have to figure it out. When you put whatever you have on the line, whether it's your time, your money, whatever, right? You have put a healthy amount of pressure on yourself to access a higher level of skill, to figure something out. And something that I know from my own life, and even from watching my clients, from friends, like just the people that I run in the same circles with, you have to be willing to do that for yourself, for your brain to access a whole different layer and version of yourself. So watch whenever you use money as the excuse instead of letting it be your reason for moving forward. Like the very reason you don't have enough of it is probably the reason you need to learn another set of skills so that you can create more. And you won't do that ever by waiting, okay? All right. Another big one, and this is one I used to hear all the time whenever I was in a relationship marketing company. So back in the day, a long time ago, back in 2014, so over 10 years ago, I joined a relationship marketing company. That was my first official taste of business and rejection and being made fun of on social media for being in an MLM pyramid scheme and all the things. By the way, it's not. That company's still going strong and they have so many accolades, and they actually, I think, are the first official company, the one that I was with, for being recognized as a legitimate non-scam company, which took a very long time and a lot of court and all the things. So anyways, I digress. But all of that to say is the biggest thing that I would hear back then is I'm waiting until my partner is on board. Okay. And we do this thing where we delegate the choice to someone completely different who is not who doesn't see the vision the way that maybe we see the vision, who doesn't have the same amount of care that we may have. And so the thing and the reason that we usually do this, I'm waiting until my partner is on board, is because we're afraid to outgrow someone or disappoint someone. Or there's this phrase that I use with my clients all the time, and I always tell them when they are really worried about someone else's emotions and they want to tiptoe around those emotional reactions that they may get from someone else, I refer to it as holding their pen. And the thing about it is when you're holding someone else's pen, you feel oftentimes responsible for their emotional reactions. Your job is to hold your pen and to be responsible for emotions you're feeling and for your EQ skill set, not the EQ skill set or lack thereof of someone else. But oftentimes, if you want to wait on something or pause on something and you specifically delegate that decision to whether or not your partner is or isn't on board, you have to remember that while it is absolutely okay and even sometimes necessary, right, to include your significant other in your decisions because you're a team, you need to understand when you're doing it in a way that may stall the growth that you're seeking, because at the end of the day, you are allowed to choose things for yourself, for the greater good of yourself, right? Even if someone else doesn't quite understand. But you have to be sold on why you're doing it for you, and then have the decision around why you want to do that thing. You have that conversation with your partner, right? But if they get emotionally upset or they don't understand, you need to have the clarity around why you really want to do something for yourself. So go back to school, quit your job, and apply to a whole different field, right? It's not your job to control the pen of whatever partner you're with. It is your job to get really clear on what it is that you desire for you in your life. Include them, absolutely, but be sold on what it is that you want for you first. Because what often happens is if you're not sold on whatever it is that you want for you first, and you're kind of you're wanting them to approve emotionally, right? You're wanting them to understand. But again, remember, there's no weight in it for them, maybe other than financial or time. And so they don't know the end result of it. They don't really understand maybe why you want it. They're not going to get it the same way that you will. And if you have not prepped yourself for why you want it the way that you do, it's going to be really, really hard to get them on board without them having a big emotional reaction, and then you will be stuck waiting again. So for a perfect example of this is my husband totally supports my business and coaching and all of that. But that was not always the case in the very beginning whenever I hired my coach. When I hired my coach in the beginning, I was 24 years old. We were both so broke. We were working our little tails off. I wasn't making a lot of money because I was an occupational therapist doing birth to age 3. It's called early intervention. And you only get paid on the kids that you see. You don't get paid if they cancel. You don't get paid if they're sick. You don't get paid if you drive, 50 miles to their house and they forgot and they don't answer the door. So, times were tough. I was not, even though my hourly rate was amazing, I wasn't making a lot of money. And I got to a point in my life where I was really just miserable and lost and sad. But I did feel like my ground was sturdy and I was ready to build on that ground. It was a little bit questionable, right? But I was really ready. And I knew if I went to my husband, who at the time we were, I think, still just dating, maybe even, maybe engaged or getting ready to be engaged. At that time, if I would have said, I want to spend this amount of money to better my life, he wouldn't have understood that, right? He wouldn't have really gotten it. And even whenever I did start investing in myself and he knew that I was having coaching calls every single week, he didn't understand like the bigger picture. He didn't understand it until he started actually seeing changes in me and how I showed up to our relationship and how I showed up to myself, until I got really, really comfortable and, started practicing being confident before I was ready and going out there and doing all of these things. And once he saw that, then he was on board, and he's been on board ever since. But my point in saying this is I didn't wait for him to believe or to be ready with me. If I had, I probably wouldn't be here. So you still get to include, and should in many ways include, your partner and let them be on board and be, a part of that. But be sold on what you need for you first. Okay, and last but not least of examples, I'm waiting until I'm more emotionally regulated. And while this may feel so true and so validating in the moment that we're saying it, emotional regulation is built based on practice of your EQ skills. So, maybe emotional safety is a non-negotiable, but sometimes the regulation comes after you stretch, not before. So many times when making decisions that feel a little, scary, unsettling, whatever, like remember not to let your brain say, I need to feel emotionally regulated first. Sometimes you're going to feel a little bit dysregulated as you're making decisions and as you're growing and stretching. And after you do it, that's when everything will settle. Like your nervous system will regulate, like, oh, okay, I did the scary thing and I lived to tell the tale and I survived and I'm okay. And now I know I have stretched my capacity, and that means I can do that again over and over again and be okay. Or if I decide to stretch myself more, it's going to feel a little scary, but I know that I can do it. Okay. So just be careful that emotional safety can sometimes become like a hiding place for us when we're wanting to use it to avoid growth, stretching, or being seen. So that leads me to 4 questions that you may want to ask yourself. So if you need to, you can pause this to write them down. But the first question is, am I clear on what I want, but avoiding what it requires? That's a huge one, because many times we don't actually need more time. We just need to be more truthful and honest with ourselves. Question number 2 is, if I had to act today, what emotions would I have to feel? This is a huge one I ask my clients all the time, because this is where avoidance ultimately hides. It's the fear of being seen or getting it wrong, or, stretching in a way that feels very uncomfortable. So we can do anything when we're willing to feel anything. And that's why emotional intelligence skills matter. If there's nothing you're unwilling to feel, there's nothing you're really unable to do. So if I had to act today, what emotions would I have to feel? And just get clear on what those emotions are, and acknowledge that they feel scary, and acknowledge that it would be hard, but that you're strong enough to do it if your ground is stable and not super mushy or quicksand, okay? Number 3, would I still be not ready if someone that I admired was watching me? Now, this one may feel a little crazy, or maybe someone that admires me, was watching. The thing is, oftentimes, if we feel like there's eyes on us, we leap faster. And that's a big piece of what makes group coaching work so well, is that when you say things out loud, you have a bunch of eyeballs and ears that are listening to these things, checking in with you, holding you accountable. And that can be really, really helpful for us. And so if you're just internalizing everything and not really thinking about who's watching, or no one truly is watching, it's a lot harder to be accountable. So just ask yourself that. If, would I still be not ready if someone that I admired, or someone that I know admires me, maybe like a child, was watching me? Okay. So then the last but not least question here is, what do I believe will happen if I move or make the steps to go before I feel ready? So what do I believe will happen? So just here's what happens here. You want to get honest about the story that you're protecting yourself from. And a lot of times that story is not even true, but it's like, I'll fail, I'll look stupid, I'll lose control. And so you have to ask yourself, is that story, which I always tell clients is like a couple words that make a sentence, is that sentence worth circling another year for? Truly, is that sentence or statement, or however you want to see it, are those words going to keep me in the same place for another year, another 2 years, another 5 years? Because if I'm not willing to address them, and I just keep saying I need to wait until, it's likely going to be never. And it's just a few words that make a sentence. It's just a sentence. And so many people allow themselves and their entire life to be controlled by a sentence. I don't have enough money. I'll never have enough money. I don't have enough time. I'll never have enough time. When the kids get older, when this, when that. And it's a sentence. And so many people allow their entire life or trajectory to be controlled by a sentence. So be mindful of when your brain is doing that to you. So last but not least, I just want to talk about the ultimate turning point of really knowing that you're ready to go, and you're no longer available for all of the waiting. Okay, so here's the turning point. Here is the total flip that changes everything. It's really understanding that the goal is not really to feel ready. Okay, it's simply to feel willing to be stretched, willing to feel scared, willing to feel exposed, willing to feel uncomfortable, willing to go anyways. If your ground, your foundation is strong, right? Or even if it's a little crumbly, a little bit muddy, but you can build on it, go. It's time to hit the gas and go, okay? Unless it's any of the things that we talked about in the beginning where you really maybe need rest and reprieve. But for the most part, it's the willingness to feel embarrassed, willingness to feel stupid, willingness to feel scared, willingness to feel like you're not confident, just willingness to feel a little bit shaky. That's not problematic. The thing that helps with all of this is knowing the skills to emotionally regulate when the human experience isn't always roses and sunshine. And for many of us, and for most of us, it's not going to feel like roses and sunshine all the time. It's 50-50, right? 50% of our life oftentimes is going to feel like hell and just bleh, and things we don't want to do and things we don't want to feel and things that are uncomfortable. And then the other 50% is going to be great and bliss and happiness and love and all the things, okay? So just allow life to be the 50-50 and stop running from the 50% of life that doesn't feel good, okay? Just let it be there. Allow acceptance of life is going to be both. Life is going to be both. And I don't have to hide or run or wait for life to constantly be sunshine, rainbows, and daisies in order to press the gas and go. That's the level of sometimes entitlement we get to if I want it to always be roses, always sunshine. Believe me, you guys, if you follow me, you know I am a girl that loves the sun. I'm literally speaking of the outdoors and the sunshine. But life is also rain, and life is also snow, and life is also gloomy clouds. And while I do not like it and I kick and scream and throw a fit, I still follow through with things that are going to grow and stretch me, even when it's not looking or feeling the exact way that I want. And sometimes what happens is people crawl into a rock and hide, which I absolutely understand, because I want to do the same thing when things are not feeling rosy and sunny and beautiful and the 50%, that I want it to be all the time. But the difference is, can you also thrive during those moments, the 50% that doesn't feel good? Can you still press the gas pedal? Can you still go? Because that ultimately makes the difference between the people who are changing things in their life and getting out of cycles and breaking patterns and healing generational traumas and moving forward and doing the things and having success and making more money and being the person they want to be, being the present parent, right? Being the partner that, sometimes our partners want and need. It's like all of that comes from understanding that we don't always have to wait. Waiting is appropriate many times, right? But maybe for like 20% of life, when it's really rainy and everything is just really, really hard and we need reprieve, we need a reset. But for most people, most times, that waiting, like the stories that we're telling ourselves, those sentences are only going to keep us stuck longer. So watch when you're doing that, okay? Instead of asking, am I ready? Ask, am I willing? Am I willing? Because waiting is absolutely fine when it's honest, when it's needed. But whenever it's not, you have to be honest that it's often hiding, hesitating, hoping, right? Waiting for permission. And ultimately what that ends up being for many people, especially women that I see, is withering away. I've talked about this before, but I had consults years ago with, I've had consults all throughout the years. I've been coaching for 7 years. But there are some certain consults that really stand out to me because I'm still in like distant acquaintance contact with certain people that I've had consults with. And it makes me so sad whenever I've had a consult with them, maybe let's say 5 years ago, and their ground truly was like wet, muddy, shaky, not stable. And I said, you need to get on stable ground. And then maybe a year and a half, 2 years later, they come back for a consult. They're ready, right? They're on stable ground. And the waiting as a form of self-protection happens. It's not that they're actually in the mud. It's not actually that they're on quicksand anymore. But that whole protective mechanism of the brain, they're not willing to stretch and feel the uncomfortable thing, okay? They want it to feel easy. They want it to feel perfect. And when I look at where those people are, right, or I catch up with them or run into them or they send me a message as an update, it's usually that not a lot has changed for them. And I get it because there's so many decisions that I've had to make super uncomfortable that have gotten me to where I am now. And something that many of my close friends that also do self-growth, that we've talked about is what if we had never made the decision? And I know so many of my clients are going to listen to this and think, oh my God, what if I had never said yes on the consult? What if I had never said yes to the program? What if I had never said yes to myself? What if I had never said yes to XYZ? And be so grateful that they did, okay? So just be mindful of this, because if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling in patterns that you've been in for years and years, if nothing is changing for you, okay, that requires a mirror to look at yourself and to grow those skills. It's different if you've only been experiencing something for a short amount of time and then maybe you're figuring it out, you're growing a little, you keep at that. But if you're in some of the same patterns and nothing has changed years and years and years of wanting to, you have to be honest with yourself, okay? So if you're at that place and you're ready for things to change, book a free consult on MacieRenee.com. That's MacieRenee.com. It's in the show notes. Click the link, go to my website, a little blurb on the bottom right corner will say book a free 60-minute consult, schedule the consult. We'll talk. Doesn't mean that you have to go forward with coaching, but I will get to know you, what you have going on, what you're wanting to work on. We will talk about options. It either feels good and you move forward or you don't. You're either at that turning point where you're ready or you're not, right? And sometimes it will be the brain trying to protect you, and sometimes it will really be because you need pause, you need nervous system reset, you need therapy, you need something else. I will always be honest with you in any consult that we do, because again, it is not fun for me as a coach. I don't want to drag anybody into growth. I want to walk beside you and cheer for you every step of the way. And I cannot do that if you're not ready. If you're sinking in mud, that is very different than being on a little bit rocky, uneven, a little bit messy ground. But at least we can walk forward together. So I'm always going to be honest with you. So book that consult if you need it, and we will go from there. I hope you have an amazing week, and I hope this episode helped you. See you soon. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of This Is Not Your Practice Life podcast. If you'd like to connect on social media, you can find me on both Instagram and Facebook at Macy Renee Coaching. And if you want to stay up to date on all of my offers, announcements, and inspirational emails, you can join my email list at macyrenee.com. In addition, if there's a way that I can further support you in your coaching journey, you can schedule a free 60-minute consult at macyrenee.com anytime you want so we can discuss the best options for you. I look forward to seeing you next week, and I hope you have an amazing day.